So my name is Ramaya Krishnan. I'm the president of Informs, and I'm also the dean of the Heinz College of Information Systems and Public Policy at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. We have a really exciting agenda for you today, featuring remarks from former Secretary of the Army, John McHugh. Thank you for your service, sir. Followed by a panel discussion with 5 Informs members who, as Melissa noted, have some really interesting experiences and insights to share with you all. Some of you who are here today have had a chance to meet some of my colleagues and may even have worked with and have had experience with operations research and analytics, and others might not. But you've all received a packet that provides a good overview of what these fields are and some examples of success stories. All around us, people are talking about data and information. It's important to recognize that data in and of itself does not directly help us save lives or save money or solve problems. It's what we do with the data that actually makes all the difference. And that's where we come in. The math and the science within operations research and analytics, processes by which data is turned into information and information is converted into insights for decision-making, high-stakes decision-making, where individuals, people are involved as well, is complicated. The proven benefits that they yield, however, are simple and straightforward. As you listen to Secretary McHugh and then our panel, I hope that what comes to light is that there is a world of operations research and analytics experts in academia and business who've been doing this really outstanding work to save lives, save money, and solve problems of virtually every type and in nearly every sector. And they are available to all of you as a resource. At the same time, I'd like for you to keep in mind that what you're hearing today is just but a sample. So it's like the veritable tip of the iceberg. So as Congress and other policymakers, on behalf of the American people, work on really important national priorities, from infrastructure to AI, national security to healthcare, and almost everything in between, we believe operations research and analytics offers proven ways for the government to operate and to deliver services more efficiently and more effectively in these increasingly complex times. So with that as backdrop, let me first of all thank you again on behalf of Informs for being here. And really, it's now my privilege and honor to introduce this morning's keynote speaker, Secretary John McHugh. OR and analytics trace their roots to World War II, when statisticians and mathematicians of that time came together with military leaders and planners to help contend with many different aspects of military operations. Now, fast forward 6 decades, and John McHugh became Secretary of the Army, a position he held for a little over 6 years, making him the second longest serving Army Secretary in US history. I think that deserves a round of applause. As Secretary, John McHugh functioned as Chief Executive Officer of the world's most powerful land force, responsible for more than 1 million soldiers, more than 400,000 civilian and contractor employees, and nearly a $250 billion budget. He provided leadership and oversight on all matters relating to the Army, including weapons systems and equipment acquisition, installations, environmental issues, manpower, personnel, reserve affairs, communications, and financial management. These, of course, are many of the types of things that operations research and analytics quietly contribute to the military every day. During his tenure, Secretary McHugh earned a reputation as a hands-on problem solver. When he came to office, the Army was engaged in 2 wars. He oversaw the target retrograde operation since World War II, all the while reducing the size of the Army in response to significant budget cuts. Prior to being nominated by President Obama to serve as Secretary, Mr. McHugh served here in Congress representing upstate New York. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Capitol Hill, and thank you for joining us today. Secretary McHugh.
10 years ago, I would have just hopped up on the stage, but I'm a stare guy these days. So, good morning. Thanks for being here. And Christian, thank you very much. Where'd you go? There he is. For that kind introduction, most of which was true. I appreciate that. And speaking of appreciation, I know we have a kind of varied audience here this morning, but particularly for those of you from Capitol Hill, I know a little bit about how busy your schedules can be, and we're deeply appreciative that you took time to share some of your morning with us. And I do think this is kind of like a debate stage here, but it's going to be where a panel, I think, gives you the real meat of what Informs is about. And speaking of Informs, I want to thank them for this opportunity provided to me. I'll tell you a bit more about them in a second, but I thought I'd open my remarks today with a story. There were two friends. They spent a lot of time together, but one of the things they did together each and every year is they'd hire a bush pilot, float plane pilot, go to a remote lake in the Canadian wilderness, go to the shore, camp out for a week, and go moose hunting that whole time. Well, this year they were coming in with a pilot they'd never hired before. He put down on a beautiful, pristine, small Canadian wilderness lake, taxied them to the shoreline, they unloaded their gear, and as he's about to leave, he said, "Look, I hope you have a great week. You know, it's going to be sunshine the whole 7 days. I wish you every bit of luck. But remember, no matter how well you do, we can only take out one moose. It's a small single-engine plane. It's a small lake, so just one moose." He took off. 7 days later, true to his word, that same pilot came to that same space. He taxied to the shoreline. He saw those two hunters with all their gear packed up, but then he noticed not one, but two moose. So he immediately got out and he said, "Look, guys, it looks like you had a terrific week, but I told you we can only take out one moose." With that, the hunters started arguing with him, pleading with him, threatening him. No matter what they said, they couldn't convince him to take out two moose. Finally, one of the hunters said, "You know, we hired your competition last year. He didn't have any problem taking out two moose." Well, with that, the man's Canadian pride was hurt. One moose on one pontoon, the other moose on the other pontoon, all the gear in the back. The two hunters hopped in. Pilot backed the plane up as far as it could possibly go on the edge of the lake, revved it to its highest RPMs, began to take off. As it got a little higher, the last bough of a pine tree caught the pontoon, flipped the plane, moose this way, moose that way, hunting gear all over the countryside. As it happened, the two hunters landed side by side. After a few minutes, one of the hunters looked around and said, "Where the hell are we?" Second hunter lifted himself up on one elbow and said, "About 100 yards further than we got last year." There's a moral to that story, because I think when a lot of us think about doing business with the government, how the government operates, many legacy industries, they think, well, you know, these are organizations that don't learn. They don't update. They don't take history and advance it. And if they do advance it, it's in small measures, and it's pretty painful. That may have been true at one point, but I would argue here today that that's largely changed. And that's why I'm so thrilled to join, and why I'm so appreciative of Informs, because this is an organization that is deeply involved in that kind of today activity, as you heard Christian say, that is so important to how we do business and how we work. And the work that the members of Inform do each and every day has resulted in really countless examples, as you heard, of better, less expensive, more effective solutions. And I think it's important for all of us, respectfully important for all of you, regardless of your policy area, to think about the ways that operations research and analytics can inform your decision-making, help develop better solutions to some of our nation's most urgent problems. In that regard, Inform provides, as you heard, a really important voice in the discussion. And again, as you heard, I think it's well worth your time to learn more about their members, learn about what they're doing in such a wide variety of sectors in our society, and important to reach out to them, to look to them as a resource to importantly help you to develop better responses to the areas in which you hold responsibility, either to your committee or to your business, or perhaps to a member of Congress. And this is the opportunity today, I think, to do just that. You know, many of us don't think often about how data analytics and operation research already influences our lives. Many of the things that we take for granted are in large part rooted in those activities. Our commutes to work, to sports we watch on television. Those both are rooted in that kind of effort and those kinds of tools. And at the same time, many of the key federal programs that are operating are also developing today through those important tools. Things like our national security, our health security, the mail delivery, particularly as it operates as part of the census. All of those things and so many more activities are based in large part on data analytics and operations research. Because the common connection in all of those things, as varied as they are, is that reliance on converting data into information and information into insights, resulting in better decision making. For those of you who may know me or know of me, or ever saw my high school grades, it's probably not a revelation to you to know that I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a mathematician, or certainly a professor of engineering. They are, however, the kind of people I sought out in those high school days to kind of cheat off of. But that having smart people, super smart people. But having said that, I have spent a great deal of time in my government service working with or within programs that, in fact, use mathematical modeling and algorithms to try to solve problems. In other words, operations research and analytics. And as Christian said, all of this activity generally is thought to have started back in World War II. And it emerged as a critical tool during that conflict as part of virtually all the military decisions that were made, from planning to weapon design, virtually every strategic aspect of that war. And in the decades, Christian said 6, I'm not a math major, I'll believe him, following, O&R and analytics have contributed really in countless ways across all branches of our national defense and beyond in what is, I know we all recognize, the never-ending fight to keep our country free and secure. But over the years, other parts of government in Washington, in states and cities across this land, in industries and organizations really of every ilk have also adopted these tools to help them do things better. And today that same type of modeling is used in ways both great and small. Things like positioning responders in the kinds of communities in which we all live, coordinating the movement of aircraft and people at airports, better bus routes for school kids, how sports teams are scheduled. In fact, how baseball teams position their fielders. For you fantasy league fanatics, sabermetrics. In short, it's virtually everywhere. It's the science behind the solutions that people need, and I would argue people deserve. And today you're going to hear some great examples of how these tools are making a real difference in both government and industry. And again, as you heard, there's a really terrific panel of very, very bright people, some of the best and some of the brightest in this field, and I'm confident they'll paint you a picture to help you better understand how complex mathematical modeling can provide meaningful solutions to the challenges that you face. Again, whether it's in your business, whether you're trying to understand the fundamentals behind a proposed bill, to help you better serve perhaps a member of Congress. And importantly, learn how leaders here in Washington can more fully capitalize on this asset. As Krishnan mentioned in his kind introduction, I was deeply honored to serve as Secretary of the Army and work with some really amazing, incredible men and women in uniform who, I'm a little prejudiced, but I believe made us the best Army in the world. And during my time, we did face significant challenges. Krishnan noted 2 major theaters of conflict: budget reductions, force restructuring, sequestration, things like that provided significant challenges, but with those and others, we increasingly relied on sound decision-making that was often increasingly dependent upon operations research and analytics. And we learned it was important to leverage analytics throughout the Army, from improving our general defense capabilities to increasing our operational effectiveness, planning for acquisitions to addressing force reductions. Data led our decision-making process. And it was the complex operations research and analytics that helped us to, even with all of that, modernize our forces, modernize our operations, that really did, at the end of the day, make our Army more efficient and more effective, even within those constraints of declining budgets. Today, all of the military includes some 2 million people with an annual DoD budget of $686 billion. That supports a wide range of activities, from 800 bases across 770 countries that serve an incredibly diverse array of missions. It supports the defense supply chain. All of those things are incredibly complex. Now, there may be some of you here from the House Armed Services Committee or from the Senate Armed Services Committee, HAC-D, SAC-D. If there are, you know that the military has one of the best supply chain operations in the world, and it's tasked with moving everything from food to weapons around the globe in a timely and efficient manner. There are vehicles, there's aircraft, there are people. Those people need to be paid. The equipment, so wide a variety of which has to be located to support those people. Department of Defense has responsibility for all of that. So how do the pieces work together? How's everything scheduled in a way that works? How are these activities, acquisitions, and missions planned, evaluated, and coordinated? Well, the answer is, in large part, data. And all the agencies within DoD, thankfully, have very smart, very dedicated experts who provide analysis and recommendations based on complex modeling and algorithms. And in turn, they inform leaders on which weapon systems will be the most efficient in a decade from now, or how to adjust for changes in end strength, or evaluate base locations, sometimes known as BRAC. It's all largely operations research and analytics. And certainly, I think it's fair to say the military and the federal government, at least, may be viewed as the gold standard within this work. That kind of analysis isn't limited just to the Pentagon. Agencies today across the federal government are increasingly leveraging these tools to make their own programs more effective and more efficient. And if I may, I'd like to just cite a few examples, some of which I'm sure you'll hear a bit more about during the upcoming panel discussion. First, to address the rapidly growing need for additional wireless spectrum in the United States and Canada, the Federal Communications Commission conducted the world's first two-sided incentive auction to meet the exploding need for wireless services by reclaiming valuable low-band electromagnetic spectrum from TV broadcasters. Not only did the FCC do this successfully and accomplish their goal, but the auction raised nearly $20 billion in revenue contributed over $7 billion to reducing the federal debt, and that was largely done through operations, research, and analytics. And in addition to that, as a result of their work and processes, TV channels across the country were able, in many instances, to remain where they were on the channel selection menu, the place where people knew where they were. And that saved an estimated $200 million just in relocation costs. Any of us who fly, and I suspect that's most everyone in this room, are certainly aware of the TSA PreCheck program. But think back. Before this was put into place, the basic approach to aviation security was to assume that all passengers pose the same threat level. But post 9/11, this method resulted in poorly allocated resources and other very significant issues. Think hour, 2-hour wait lines through security. But thanks to operations research and analytics, that approach was ultimately changed to a risk-based, multi-level passenger approach that better aligned passenger risk with security resources. And we know it today better as PreCheck. And while the full story of PreCheck and how it was implemented is certainly longer and more complicated than that, I think the results are very simple and very clear. Today, more than 15 million passengers are enrolled in the TSA PreCheck or receive PreCheck benefits. Every day, roughly 1 million passenger screenings in the U.S. and over 200 airports are in TSA PreCheck security lines. PreCheck provides hundreds of millions of dollars in direct annual savings for the country while enhancing the security of our nation's air system. You can also look to areas like healthcare, where operations research and analytics are providing invaluable contributions to better outcomes. One example of that is where just a few years ago, the Centers for Disease Control combined a range of operation research tools with the best available scientific evidence and field knowledge to combat the wild polio virus. As a result, the disease was wiped out in India, and that saved, obviously, countless lives and billions of dollars. And I could go on with these, but we'll let the panelists kind of fill in those and other examples. I just want to add that while I was in Congress, I also served the Postal Subcommittee as its chair. We were able to lead the effort on postal reform. That was back in 2006, and that topic remains a focus of Congress today. But the delivery of mail is yet another key example of how operations research and analytics plays an important, though largely invisible, role in our daily lives. These delivery models direct millions of pieces of mail from one end of the country to the other, and countless spots in between, and it's done through complex modeling. I mention this because simply, if your focus is on the Postal Service, on agriculture, national security, transportation, healthcare, or really virtually any other policy area, data is playing a significant role in making decisions, and I would argue with your participation, with your input, can make a greater impact still. So as Congress tackles these and other important problems and newer policy challenges such as AI and sharing the economy and smart cities, I would argue the opportunity to leverage operations and research and analytics is greater and more important today than perhaps ever before. So that's kind of a scene setter. Again, let me thank Informs and for this opportunity. Wish you the best for the conclusion of this session. And once more, thank you to all of you for joining us here this morning. And I know you're looking forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.